Welcome, viewers and listeners, to another edition of CHP Talks. I'm here today with Jakki Jeffs from the Alliance for Life Ontario. She's been on the program before, a long friend of ours and a friend of the movement for sanity in Canada. So, Jakki, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome, Rodden. Thank you for asking.
Jakki is coming to us from Guelph, where she is the executive director of Alliance for Life Ontario. She's been the executive director since 1989, and she's been involved in the educational pro-life movement in Canada since 1985. She has written, researched, and presented at all government levels on a range of pro-life issues. She has arranged, and it's probably more now, but at our last conference, our last discussion, it was 30 annual pro-life conferences. She's a founding president of Michael House Pregnancy Home and a founding chair of the Garden of Grace, which is dedicated to children who have died before birth by abortion or miscarriage. And today we're going to discuss the disastrous Bill C-63. The government bill is guaranteed to destroy our democracy if it is passed into law. So, Jakki, this bill, they call it the Online Harms Bill, and it starts off sounding kind of concerned about our children in Canada. It's supposed to represent the effort to protect children from online sexual harm, particularly sexual information or any kind of luring and things that go on online. So what's not to like about this bill?
Well, to me, it's like having a beautiful satin purse with a scorpion inside it. To be honest with you, it's you have to applaud. If it were the case, I would applaud, and I think CHP would as well, anything that we could do to prevent our children being harmed online, like with revenge porn and all other things. But my research on this, and this is coming from lawyers, I research what other people are saying and check it out, is that most of what this bill, particularly when it addresses the online harm, is already in our criminal code, or where it's talking about guidelines that internet or social media platforms should have. Most of those platforms and social media gurus follow the guidelines that are in here. So it's almost like stating the same thing again to cover up what I believe is the actual intent of this, and I think that is to shut every platform, every voice, every opposition to the self-proclaimed messaging regarding family and life and sexuality and religion, politics. To be honest, that's my very quick read of it, and although I have not quickly read it, but that, if anybody has not looked at this at all, Canadians, we really need to wake up, because this is our democracy on the line here.
Most of the people that you and I interact with on a regular basis, people we appreciate and respect, and people who are working to protect families and protect life and to protect democracy, are up in arms about this bill and concerned. And there's so much in it that's hidden. It's a Trojan horse with the outward appearance is to protect children, but inside, as you mentioned, it's full of scorpions and dead things. We recently put out a communique titled Bill C-63, The Desperate Act of a Failing Tyrant. And it seems like the public resistance to the Trudeau regime and the Trudeau agenda is rising, and it looks to me like when they brought this bill forward, they used this child protection of children on the internet as the window dressing, but hidden inside are some terrible things, which they definitely, if it's passed, they will use to restrict our freedom of speech. So one of the things in there is hate crime. That they we already have restrictions on hate crimes and so on, very poorly defined. But why is the category of hate crime so fraught with danger for us in democracy?
Well, if you look at the bill before, I will answer that, but
Yeah.
again, just remember that this bill establishes a commission. It establishes a commissioner, an office. So this is a whole three other little levels of government, except for they're not elected officials that could be in that particular, in those particular pieces. And they have carte blanche to do what they like. To be honest with you, that's exactly what it seems with this. So when you look at the bill itself under section 13(4), it talks about what hatred means. And honestly, I couldn't believe this when I looked at hatred means the emotion that involves detestation or vilification and that is stronger than disdain or dislike. Now, with a fun hat on, suddenly we've got our emotions are being criminalized. You hear it from kids. I hate that. I don't want that. We all do this with things. You don't mean it, but it's what we say. But it is a human emotion. So how are you criminalizing a human emotion? And then within that, we have to decide whether it's detestation or vilification, or whether it's disdain or dislike. I mean, it's nonsense. It is absolute nonsense. So the other piece is your the section 3201001.1, and it says, everyone who commits an offence under this act or any other act of Parliament, if the commission of the offence is motivated by hatred, then of course it's based on, and all the usual are there. Who is going to judge that the way you acted was motivated by hatred, which, by the way, means the emotion that involves detestation, vilification is stronger than disdain or dislike? Who is the person that is going to say to you, when you did that, you were motivated by hatred?
Is that like when Mr. Trudeau said about the truckers, these people are whatever, and he threw out a bunch of accusations, unproven accusations, and then he said, how long are we going to tolerate these people? And that seemed to me like detestation, vilification, but of course these terms are vague.
Yeah, I think that's frustration because we won't do what he wants us to do, and nobody's believing that was necessary anyway. I think that's the hardest, and maybe that's going to be our safeguard with this, although given the NDP's backing of everything that Mr. Trudeau's government puts forward, I'm not sure. Just an intervention from up there, I think, might make the only difference that we could hope for.
Right.
But it is very, to me, I am really, really scared because and I mean, I am fearful, I guess. Fearful is a word, because we have faced over the years from those who don't agree with us this type of attitude towards us, that you're bigots, you hate women, you hate this, you hate that. Well, now here it is inscribed in law. And you've got folks that actually are not ruled, in a sense, by Parliament, who can decide these things. So I'm really, really bothered, because who is going to tell me that I acted in hatred? That was the motivation. So there's going to be a presumption of that. And I don't know how they're going to work that out. Because
It's so ironic. It's so ironic when we feel almost every day the hatred from those who are opposed to our views on family, life, family, and freedom. And really, if it you look closely at it under a microscope, it's hatred. They detest and vilify uh, pro-life, pro-family groups, and yet they want to turn that around and use that against us in these pseudo courts, human rights commissions, human rights tribunal.
Yeah. On that note too, we've also got this whole piece, especially with the pro-life movement, where you've got the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada. And I mean, I've only recently found a few of these things in other research that I've been doing. But I mean, they began in 2017, the attack against the messaging that was pro-life. Firstly, it was about advertising. And so they have this whole strategy. Every time anybody sees a pro-life or a pro-family or a religious comment ad anywhere, they have a whole strategy of fighting that using ad standards. They've also collected and made up a document of every 141 cities in Canada that use ad standards as a level of judgment for the ads that go on park benches, cities, wherever, the city property. They've also got information out there that tells you where the courts have endorsed that use. Well, just like this supposed commission, ad standards is a privately put together consortium of people who have set their own standards for things, regardless of what the freedoms of our countries are, and then try and impose that on us in cities. Well, we've had, again, many right to life groups that have fallen foul of that because the cities are using ad standards code rather than the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So our freedom of expression is just squished by a body, it's squished by the city, of course, but using a level of a business organization that's in media. Well, sorry, that doesn't actually apply here. So, we've had all this, but what I was trying to say is the opposition to our pro-life, pro-family, pro-religious stance, which is in part Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada, has been part of setting all of this up. We've had it with the summer jobs attestation, right?
Yeah,
we were involved with summer jobs forever. This is why I call it's been like a stealth journey to this socialism, because it's been little pieces. We've also had the threat from this government in its original letter after the I forget what it was that he put out that actually said, that they are going to be looking at the charitable status of pro-life or Christian pregnancy centers. So it's not, we shouldn't be surprised at this, I think. And again, on a very, very local level, many of our groups, I'm arguing with many groups, many cities all the time about their not allowing our pro-life groups to access services that are offered to every other group, like fly your flag, proclamation, announcements of events. And in one piece, in one city, I won't say where, but in one city, they've actually wrongly defined the group, calling them religious. And in one of their guideline policies, it actually states, I haven't got it dead in front of me here, but it states that no religious events will be posted, no religious flags will be hoisted, and I forget the other one. But I'm thinking, this is Canada, where one of our fundamental freedoms is the freedom of religion.
Well, we have, in our city here, Smithers, BC. We know there's gay pride crosswalk and flags flying, but they would not take a pro-life flag because they say well, pro-life is political, gay rights is welcoming and inclusive. Well, the opposite is true, but in a democratic society, if they're allowing it's an advocacy group. They're allowing them to use public property and at public expense. Even the painting of these crosswalks is at public expense. We even would do something on our own expense, but they don't want that message. And
No,
it's
and you see, that's the biggest, I think that's the biggest problem that we have. And it really is a huge problem, Rod, because, and I was called by one councillor from a city that I'd been writing to, and she said to me, so you're telling me that you wouldn't picket if we put up the other side's message? I said, no, I wouldn't like it. The same way as I have a very strong traditional stance on what marriage is and sexuality. But in a democracy, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find it, but a democracy is absolutely a democracy because we allow the messages we don't like, or in actual fact, we hate. That's actually in one comment from a judge.
Yeah, well, freedom of speech only has any bearing whatsoever when it allows people to speak things that you disagree with. If you're just going to allow people to say things that you agree with, that's not freedom of speech. That's just using your pals to promote your message, right? And that's exactly what this government wants to do with C-63 and there are other bills that they've been passing, C-367, which would limit any religious connotation or religious defense of speech, right?
Yes, yeah. The other piece that bothers me, and I didn't do a lot of research on it at the time, not sure why, but I didn't, was the fact that we did have, what was his name? Brian Storseth, I think, in 2012 brought forth a bill to actually repeal Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Code. That really, and originally I think when it was placed in there, it was because there were white supremacists in the 60s and Nazi supporters that were using the phones to leave numbers and things to then espouse their views and values. So it was originally, I believe, put in for that, but then extended in 2001, 97, I think, to include the internet and then everything that was happening on there. But it was deemed unconstitutional by several court decisions that you can't do that. And then the Conservatives actually repealed it with Mr. Storseth.
That sounds right, Storseth.
Yeah, Storseth's bill. Which was amazing, but this is going to now bring that back. So we've even got more worries, and I think that there's a lot that's wrong in this bill, as far as silencing our views. But with the bill, with Section 13, usually it's the governments or federally regulated businesses that are, shouldn't say forced to comply, but anyway, forced to comply with government laws and everything on discrimination and whatever and everything. But when that last section came back into play in Bill in Section 13, the last piece that they added to it in 97, it included all Canadians. So, if you think this is just about others, it is not. This is about your right to or have on your website or send an email or go into social media and say, I defend traditional marriage, or I defend, traditional understanding of sex between a man and a woman, or I defend this. You are going to be in big trouble. And
well, you mentioned social media. this
Yeah.
bill would attempt to put social media companies and platforms, it'll put the onus on them to actually restrict, because if there's something on there that Justin Trudeau does not like or his minions do not like, an anonymous complaint can go in, and then and we'll talk a little bit more about this anonymous
Yeah.
complainant
Yeah.
list.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it puts the onus on that social media platform to remove what they consider offensive content. It may be just a true statement, biblically and biologically accurate about gender and so on. But if Justin Trudeau doesn't like it or his people don't like it, that complaint would put the onus on the social media company, whether it's X, like Twitter, or Facebook. And if they do not remove it, they would receive heavy fines. Well, these companies are not going to stand up for our values. They probably, the people at the top of them, I don't know about Elon Musk, but in case of Mark Zuckerberg, they do not support our values. They're not
No,
going to put their necks on the line and pay massive fines of millions of dollars
no, they're not.
protect our right to free speech. They're going to just pull it off and say, well, we had to do it because of government.
Yeah, we've already seen that with Facebook, because Facebook won't carry any Canadian content, news content now, right? So
Right.
whereas Google paid the money. I think what's scarier to me about what this attitude to the social media gurus, if you like. Elon Musk calls Bill 63 insane, by the way. just
Yeah,
you know,
good for him.
if that bothers you at all.
He has at least moments of brilliance. We appreciate him that
He does. He
freed
does.
Twitter from its previous,
Yeah.
kind of slaveholding mentality.
Yeah. But this whole idea of if something is offensive, the platforms have to deal with it within 24 hours. Now, that could be totally impossible for them to do. And what's amazing is the fines. They could. I was looking. Somebody did it for me the other day, because I think it's an eighth, whichever is the most, sort of 50,000. I can't think what it is, 500,000 or an eighth of your intake for the year, which for one of the platforms would have been something like $2.8 billion. Like, who is going to do that? The other piece is that it insists that government should be able to insert any of its operatives on any platform, which I worry about data and those sorts of things, to be able to go in and do like a search and see what of everybody, everything that's on there. It is such an intrusive thing. And quite honestly, I would say that the government of China would be credited with doing something like this, because really, seriously, you'd expect it from there, because that's what it does. But not in a democracy like ours. Really, I am really appalled by it, to be honest. Yep. Well, they'll pull out. We'll pull out. Then we'll have the Mr. Trudeau internet in Canada, like they've got just the Communist Party internet in China, that just stops you from seeing anything that could actually help you have an informed choice, right?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned on Facebook, I've already had a lot of trouble. We used to be able to post news articles from any source, secular media as well as pro-life and other sources. But if they consider it a news item, they just said, sorry, we can't carry this because of Canadian law. And it's just like during the COVID madness, the federal government used businesses to enforce their edicts, right? And they leaned on businesses, and then the government says, "Oh, we didn't restrict your freedoms. It was the businesses that did it." Well, the businesses knew that they had to cooperate, or they would be punished by this dictatorial regime.
And that's the other thing you talked about, posting an article. Oh, that was a news story, I think you meant, but you said, but that's the other piece. If you post anything, that is also liable to this scrutiny, and then you get it back in the face, or wherever you get it. you talked about the anonymous thing. You got a question on that you were going to
Yeah.
ask, right?
So this bill would allow anonymous complaints. So you don't get to face your accuser. You don't get to have this person in a court of law and say, well, why, on what basis do you consider this to be hateful or whatever? This anonymous complaint goes in, but there's a deeper level. The anonymous complainant has the opportunity to be paid for their so-called snitching or whatever. And so there's an incentive. The government, if this bill passes, would create an incentive for people to accuse their neighbors of things that they don't like. But they could come out. I heard the number of $20,000 for.
It's 20,000. It's up to 20,000. I think if the person is found guilty, so you have to do that. But you can see a whole new business.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I know there's a things on. It's the most awful thing. These OnlyFans places, but I think you're going to have only complaints places because
yeah.
I'm dealing with one group at the moment who had 18 complaints to an ad that is such a simple, inoffensive ad. You've never seen anything so beautiful. Actually, it just is. Now you imagine if you put a tag of 20,000 on that. This is a complaint just because they don't agree with our message, right?
Yeah.
So there 18 of them are prepared in one city to make this complaint. So you put money behind that and see where you go.
And
I
if
mean, again,
they don't have any court costs. There's no cost for them to complain, but the defendant, if someone is accused of a hate crime, is going to have to hire lawyers and if found guilty by probably an appointed, biased panel,
yeah,
you could have to pay massive. I mean, they could ruin people like us. We operate on small
absolutely.
margins, both as families and as organizations. It wouldn't take much to ruin us economically, and that's part of the whole deal. To take the wind out of
Yeah.
our sails, make it impossible for us to function.
Yeah. Well, I think the other piece that really bothers me is given what this is, given what they're setting up, those that wrote this, those that will be part of it, know its intent. So I cannot see that any person that runs afoul of this is ever going to be exonerated or found not guilty. I think that's what, because they have to know, one piece that really frustrated me, it saddened me, when the press conference was on and the government brought a lady whose daughter had been bullied dreadfully on social media. And she made a statement. She said, if this bill had been law in 2012, when my daughter killed herself, it may have prevented that. But again, that revenge porn piece has been part of our criminal code since 2010. So you tell me you have a government that allows a grieving mother like that, obviously still grieving, to actually believe a lie like that. And so anything can go. And that's why I say with this is so obviously a way of shutting down our expression, whether it be for the government, well, I guess no, because you could say that, against the government, whether you're against certain bills. And I think more worrisome to me is the political closing down, because I can see this affecting, and I'm not really a political person, but I'm astute enough to see if you can't grumble against the government. I mean, I've been raised in England and then here, where you can shout what you like as long as it's not hate or criminal, wherever you like, and hand pamphlets out. It's all part of what makes us a democracy. So why are they so afraid? I'm thinking out loud to myself, really. Maybe they're not afraid. Maybe the fact is this government and people that support this don't really want a democracy anymore in Canada.
Well,
They want cookie cutter Canadians. We all think the same. We all believe the same. We're all given so much money to stay home and do what we like. And then those that want to have power over us, and that's at a national level as well as an international level,
yeah,
will be able to do what they want
yeah,
because we'll
that's
all
it.
be
I think
money.
the Liberals and the NDP, that coalition from the darker regions, they see that Canadians, even in this day of confusion, and even with the level of mass media, I guess indoctrination that has been going on in the schools and in the legacy media paid for by the government, I think they see that even under those conditions, there's a lot of Canadians that are just fed up, and maybe it's just their pocketbook because the government has been so loose with the spending and has been, wasting their money. He's added over 100,000 to the bureaucracy, 100,000 people that were paying their salaries to do what? Things like this. Um, but I think that that is part of what's driving this bill from the Liberal side is they want to shut down any dissent or any voices of reason because when we go into the next election, which probably it looks like is going to be next year, uh,
Mm-hmm.
they don't want our message to be
No,
uh,
no.
on the airwaves or on the internet. They want to be able to control the communication so that they can again portray themselves as defenders of human rights, and the opposite is the case.
Yeah. Now, if you remember I can't remember quite the title. I might have got it wrong. Was it The Liberanos, Ezra Levant's book? Do you remember when it came out just before or during elections? And the
Right.
big hullabaloo there was about that. You can't write a book, saying anything wrong about the government during an election. Please. We've had these warnings. We have had these warnings, Rod, all along. Um, and I don't think we've really taken them seriously. You just because it's hard to believe that Canada would be uh, a socialist country, but I think we're absolutely heading that way. And I don't mean that alarmist. I just think that the facts show you, because you read what our Constitution has said, and as I say, I keep going back to this. These and our charter, obviously, but the Constitution, it talks about those fundamental freedoms, and these are not just freedoms. They're not just any freedoms. They're fundamental to us because we're human beings. To
Yes.
express yourself, to live how you want, to be free to assemble, to be free to have the religion of your choice. These are not things that government provide. They recognize them, but they've got so many, I think, Canadians that don't really understand that. They are part of who we are as a human being. We have those, and government cannot trample on them. They just cannot.
Yeah.
But they do, and they are.
We can't allow them to trample on it, or our grandchildren will be asking us, what was it like when you actually had free speech, right? What does that mean?
Yeah,
Because we're about to lose it if we allow this bill to go through. So, Jakki, you've mentioned, as you and I were chatting earlier, several organizations, and I'm going to name a couple of them here, and you may have others that you'd like to mention who are doing a great job of covering this and other, critical issues. But the Canadian Constitution Foundation, which
Yep.
is theccf.ca,
Yep.
theccf.ca,
Yep.
and the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom. That's very good. Also, they have a
Yep.
petition. We're going to put a couple of these links in our show notes, and
Good.
we urge people to go to the petition at Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, jccf.ca. And then your organization is allianceforlifeontario.ca. And
Yeah.
then our recent article on Bill C-63 is found on our website, chp.ca. What other
Did you
links
mention
or
civil
name?
liberties?
What?
Civil liberties. Did you mention the civil liberties? Is that
No,
gone off
no,
of
no,
my
go
head?
ahead.
So the Civil Liberties Association, Canadian Civil Liberties Association, and they and the Canadian Constitution Foundation were one of the first ones to come out against that. Against this, well, at least warning us
Yeah.
that there are, and I don't know if I've got that website. You
That's
can,
the Canadian Civil Liberties Association,
yeah, ccla.org.
ccla.org.
Yeah.
So there's lots of information and deep dives into all of this. Like we've barely touched the surface, I think, today.
Oh,
we've hit on some of the more nefarious points of this bill, but this bill goes very deep. It's very long. If you go to read the bill, it's quite lengthy and tedious
it's
to read.
104 pages. It's
Yeah.
104 pages. And then they tell me I can't write a page to a government official because they won't read it. What can
Yeah.
I say?
Yeah. Well, lots
And
of
there's another group, sorry, not another group, but there's another voice that it would be very good for for our folks to hear from, and that is David Thomas. I don't know if you've heard anything from him. He's a Vancouver lawyer, and he was president of the Canadian Human Rights Commission until last summer, and he has come out absolutely swinging at this. If you want me to do a quick couple of quotes. He said the vagueness, he said nobody really knows what hate speech is. He said what we're likely to see right away is a chilling effect on people's expression, on everybody. And he said, you know, some of these cases, when they go to the commission and then the tribunal, like they have got backlogs like you wouldn't believe. So say this person who his anonymous accuser went to the provincial judge and actually I'll use the language of the bill, actually proved, as long as the Attorney General's consent, laid an information before a provincial court judge if the person fears on reasonable grounds that another person will commit this in the future. So the hate propaganda. So this person might have seen something I wrote, let's just put it like that, on our website. All right, so human life has a biological beginning, right? We all know that at fertilization for most of us. So that caused this person to fear, because I'm saying this, that I will probably say it again. So they can go anonymously to a judge. They can present all of this information to the judge. If the judge believes there's an absolute probability that I might go say it again, then I can be hauled up and I can be put on house arrest. If I won't agree to recognizance, I have to go to prison. I could be on house arrest. You can take all my body fluids. You can tell me I can't smoke, which doesn't bother me, but they are saying you can't have alcohol, which would annoy me because I do like a glass of wine. So, you'd be restricted in when you can come and go in your home. You'd have an ankle bracelet. This on the basis of somebody that's accused you that you don't know who it is or what it is or what you said.
Exactly. And you mentioned that you might commit it again. I think it goes further than that. It is the potential of being accused of a crime not yet committed. So
Absolutely.
because you
Absolutely.
are
Yes.
pro-life, they might assume that you are going to do something that you haven't done yet and
Right.
have no intention of doing, but that you might do something
Might do
that
it.
they would consider hateful. And
Yeah.
on that basis, you could have an ankle bracelet and be confined to your home. And
Yeah.
that is so outrageous. I
It
mean,
is.
today we have people in jail from some because of Trudeau's arrogance and, pomposity. We have people in jail because they have not yet had a day in court and to be able to prove themselves innocent.
But it's going to take a long time, Rod. That's the piece that David Thomas says, and he is the expert. And he said, "I'm speaking out because the people on the tribunal can't. So I'm saying this to you now. These cases can take years, which means you will be under that for years, and just so that we, if you don't mind, that we don't forget it. This isn't just on a national level. I think we really need to understand you've got the European Union that's just brought in similar stuff. And in November, we had, and I didn't understand actually, to be honest, even as little as 4 or 5 months ago, the importance of it. This idea that there is it's UNESCO, which is the UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, has brought out guidelines for the governance of digital platforms around the world. And they've had apparently discussions from 134 countries. But basically the headlines on this are like the UN thought police to control your freedom, inside the UN plan to control speech online. So this isn't, I'll quote this a little bit because I think it's good. The approach includes the imposition of global policies through institutions such as governments and businesses that seek to stop the spread of various forms of speech while promoting objectives such as cultural diversity and gender equality. In particular, the UN agency aims to create an internet of trust through a focus on what it calls misinformation and disinformation, hate speech, and conspiracy theories. And here's my very first piece on that. Women are getting off birth control amid misinformation explosion. Wow. And the misinformation is that there is natural family planning out there that actually works. That's part of the misinformation. Right. So this is what's happening here in Canada is all part of what's happening around the globe. And we've been through COVID and come out, and we've learned an awful lot about the power grab that's going on in order to reset our world. And, if you want to think that's a conspiracy theory, fine, I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I'm actually a factual conspiracy theorist. Never mind.
Well, the whole thing is, they use the term conspiracy theories, right? But when you actually uncover a real conspiracy, it's no longer a theory. Then it is a fact. And again, they will use that. They use those terms all the time, conspiracy theorist and misinformation. They use that to discredit actual biological, biblical, and scientific realities. And by painting people like us with that brush, they are, of course, exercising their own hatred towards us, and but they want to, build this frame in which only their perspective can be portrayed without punishment, and that's something we must fight against.
It is, and I think we've seen it with the doctors that have had other thoughts about how to treat COVID. We've seen those doctors lose their jobs. And be vilified, be threatened with losing their licenses. I mean, this is not Canada. This isn't the Canada that we know. And in my own little reference, we have a website which is Abortion Pill Reversal, which is perfectly wonderful. If you had a pill, you have second thoughts within 72 hours. There's almost a 70% chance of saving a baby's life. It's amazing. Well, that has been called everything under the sun. And one doctor I know that if I named him, you would know him, literally has stepped back from doing that because he's been threatened by his college that if you keep it up, you will lose your license. And he has a wonderful practice of so many other things. And it's understandable. So he stepped back from that under that sort of pressure. Now, Who would expect that in Canada in 2024?
Yeah.
But that's what we have.
We are at the barricades right now, and we must continue to resist evil in all its forms, and especially when it's coming from a government which is supposed to be an elected representative government that's supposed to be acting on behalf of the people who put it in place. And that's not the case today. And it's sadly on the federal level, provincial level, and on many municipal levels, we are being betrayed by the very people that we have allowed to get into office. And that's why the Christian Heritage Party is seeking to put people in office that will stand up for the rights of Canadians. So,
and I know you need to close. I know you need to close, Rob, but I just had one quote that I found the other day that I thought was amazing, to be honest. And it's George Orwell, and he says, "In an era of deceit, speaking the truth is a revolutionary act." So I am glad to be a revolutionary. And I think everybody else out there with the CHP and the pro-life movement, we are going to have to be revolutionaries and speak the truth. And no matter what happens, even if we end up in the gulag, that's it.
Yeah, speaking the truth in love is always the right thing to do.
Always.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, Jakki Jeffs, Executive Director of Alliance for Life Ontario. We appreciate your work, your good work there in Ontario, and I expect to see you sometime in the next couple of months. Are you going to be at the March for Life in Ottawa?
Yes, I'll be at the March for Life, but I'll also be in Hamilton, please God. So, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, God bless you, and we'll see you then. Thanks for being with us today.
You're so welcome, Rod, and thank you.